17th, 1941, 400 miles west of Ireland, North Atlantic. The water is black as ink, and the wind tears across the surface in sheets of freezing spray. Convoy HX-112 plows eastward through 12-foot swells, 41 merchant ships loaded with grain, steel, timber, and oil from America. Freighters and tankers spread across miles of churning ocean, their hulls groaning with every rise and fall. Above deck, lookouts scan the horizon with salt-crusted binoculars, searching for the one thing that terrifies them more than the storm: U-boats. Somewhere beneath this convoy, silent and unseen, German submarines are moving into position. Kapitänleutnant Otto Kretschmer commands U-99, one of the deadliest hunters in the Kriegsmarine. He's already sunk over 200,000 tons of Allied shipping. His crew calls him Silent Odo because he stalks his prey without waste, without hesitation. Right now, he's tracking the convoy through his periscope, watching the merchant ships lumber past like cattle in a field. The British know the U-boats are out here. They always are. What they don't know is where or when or how many. The Atlantic has become a killing ground. In the first 3 months of 1941 alone, German submarines have sent over 500,000 tons of shipping to the bottom. Hundreds of sailors drowned in freezing water, their ships torpedoed before they even saw the enemy. Britain is an island. It survives on imports: food, fuel, weapons, everything. If the convoys stop arriving, the war is over. Not in years, in months. And the Germans know it. Admiral Karl Donitz, commander of the U-boat fleet, has a strategy he calls the Rudeltaktik, wolfpack tactics. Instead of single submarines hunting alone, he coordinates groups of U-boats to converge on a convoy all at once. They surface at night, charge in among the merchant ships, fire torpedoes at close range, then slip away before the escorts can respond. It's devastatingly effective. The Royal Navy can't protect every ship. They can't see the submarines coming, and they can't predict which convoy will be hit next. But there's something the Germans don't know. 900 miles to the east, in a Victorian mansion outside the village of Bletchley, England, a team of mathematicians, linguists, and engineers are working around the clock in wooden huts scattered across the estate grounds. They're not soldiers. Most of them have never held a rifle. But they're fighting a different kind of war. A war of intelligence, intercepts, and ciphers. Their target isn't a submarine or a convoy. It's a machine. The Enigma machine. It looks like a typewriter fitted with rotors and plug boards, compact enough to fit in a wooden case. Every German submarine carries one. When a submarine commander receives orders from Donitz, where to patrol, which convoy to attack, when to rendezvous with other boats, those orders are encrypted using Enigma. The machine scrambles each letter of the message through a series of rotating wheels and electrical circuits, producing an encoded text that looks like random gibberish. To decrypt it, you need another Enigma machine set to the exact same rotor positions, plugboard settings, and internal wiring. There are 159 quintillion possible configurations. The Germans believe it's unbreakable. They're wrong. At Bletchley Park, in a cramped office in Hut 8, a 28-year-old mathematician named Alan Turing is leading the effort to crack the naval Enigma codes. He's thin, awkward in conversation, with a habit of chaining his coffee mug to the radiator so no one borrows it. His colleagues find him eccentric, some find him difficult, but no one questions his brilliance. Turing isn't trying to guess the Enigma settings by hand. That would take lifetimes. Instead, he's designed a machine to do it for him. He calls it the bomb. It's a hulking electromechanical device 6 feet tall, covered in rotating drums and wiring. When the codebreakers intercept a German message, they feed it into the bomb along with a crib, a likely word or phrase they think appears in the plaintext, like weather report or convoy. The machine cycles through thousands of possible rotor settings per minute, testing each one until it finds a match. When it does, the drums stop spinning, and the codebreakers know they've broken that day's settings. Then they can decrypt every message the Germans send using those same settings for the next 24 hours, until the codes change again at midnight. It's a race against time, every day, every night. Right now, in the early hours of March 17th, the night shift in Hut 8 is hunched over decrypted intercepts. They've just broken yesterday's naval Enigma key. The messages are coming through now: decoded German orders, patrol coordinates, attack plans. One message stops them cold. It's a transmission from U-boat command vectoring a wolf pack towards convoy HX-112. The submarines are already moving. The attack will come tonight. The intelligence is rushed to the Admiralty in London. Commanders scramble to reroute the convoy, to reinforce the escorts, to do anything they can. But there's a problem. If the British react too quickly, if they change course at the exact moment the U-boats expect to find them, the Germans will realize their codes have been compromised. And if that happens, they'll change the Enigma system entirely. Bletchley Park will be blind, the convoys will be defenseless. So the Admiralty has to be careful. They can't save every ship. Sometimes they let convoys sail into danger just to protect the secret. It's a brutal calculation. Lives weighed against intelligence. Sailors sacrifice so the codebreakers can keep working. Tonight, HX-112 has a fighting chance. But only because, thousands of miles away, a quiet mathematician with a chained coffee mug has built a machine that can think faster than the enemy. The battle for the Atlantic isn't one with guns or torpedoes. It's one with codes.
It doesn't look like salvation. It looks like an industrial accident, a wall of spinning bronze drums stacked in rows, each one the size of a dinner plate, connected by miles of colored wiring that snake through the frame like veins. When it runs, the whole machine hums and clicks, the drums rotating in synchronized patterns, testing rotor positions at a speed no human could match. The noise fills Hut 11, where the bombs are housed, a constant mechanical drone that the operators learn to ignore. But right now, in late March 1941, there aren't enough bombs. Turing's first prototype has been running since August 1940, and it works, but barely. The German Navy uses a more complex version of Enigma than the Army or Air Force. Naval Enigma has more rotors, more settings, more variables. Breaking it requires not just one bomb, but several running in parallel, and even then, success isn't guaranteed. Some days, the codebreakers at Bletchley crack the day's settings by mid-morning. Other days, they don't crack them at all. And on those days, the convoys sail blind. Alan Turing knows this. He knows that every hour of delay costs lives. He's been pushing the engineers to build more bombs faster, but production is slow. The machines are handcrafted, assembled by workers at the British Tabulating Machine Company in Letchworth. Each one takes weeks to build and requires constant maintenance. The rotating drums wear down, the electrical contacts fail, the machines break, and when they do, the codebreakers lose precious time. Turing spends his days moving between Hut 8, where his team works on the cryptanalysis, and Hut 11, where the bombs run. He's always thinking, always refining. His mind works in layers, mathematical, mechanical, philosophical. He doesn't just want to break the codes. He wants to understand how the human mind solves problems, and whether a machine can be made to think the same way. It's a question that fascinates him, even in the middle of a war. His colleagues in Hut 8 are a strange mix of talents. There's Hugh Alexander, a chess champion with a sharp tactical mind who can spot patterns in encrypted messages faster than anyone else. Joan Clark, one of the few women in the cryptanalysis section, works alongside Turing as an equal, though she's paid less because of her gender, a fact that infuriates him. There are mathematicians from Cambridge, linguists from Oxford, a stockbroker, a museum curator, even a few crossword enthusiasts recruited after a newspaper puzzle competition. They're brilliant, eccentric, and exhausted. Most of them work 12-hour shifts 6 days a week. Some sleep in makeshift bunks on site rather than waste time commuting. The work is relentless. Every morning at midnight, the Germans change their Enigma settings. The clock resets. Everything the codebreakers learned the day before becomes useless. They start again from zero, intercepting new messages, searching for cribs, feeding data into the bombs, waiting for the drums to stop. Sometimes they break the code by dawn. Sometimes it takes until evening. And sometimes the settings are so obscure, so deeply buried in the machine's complexity, that they never break them at all. But when they do break it, when the bomb stops and the settings click into place, the intelligence flows like water. Suddenly, Bletchley can read every message the German Navy sends. U-boat positions, patrol zones, rendezvous coordinates, supply routes. The Admiralty gets the intercepts within hours, sometimes minutes. Convoys are rerouted away from known wolfpack positions, escort groups are sent to areas where U-boats are refueling, depth charge attacks become more accurate. The Royal Navy still can't see the submarines, but now they know where to look. The Germans notice the change. Donitz reviews his reports and sees the pattern. Convoys slipping past his patrols, attacks that should have succeeded turning into failures, U-boats sunk in areas where they thought they were safe. He suspects the British have improved their direction-finding equipment, or maybe their radar. He doesn't suspect the codes. Enigma is supposed to be unbreakable. The mathematicians told him so. And that's the edge. The Germans trust the machine. They trust the complexity. They can't imagine that a team of civilians in a mansion in the English countryside could be systematically dismantling their most secure communications. So they keep using Enigma. They keep sending messages, and Bletchley keeps reading them. But the war is far from over. In April 1941, Britain is still losing the Battle of the Atlantic. U-boats are sinking ships faster than they can be replaced. The convoys are getting through more often, yes, but not often enough. Donitz has over 100 submarines at sea now, and more being built every month. The wolf packs are growing larger, more coordinated. Even with Enigma broken, the odds are still in Germany's favor. Turing knows this. He knows that intelligence alone won't win the war. The bombs can crack the codes, but they can't sink the submarines. They can't build more merchant ships. They can't escort the convoys. All they can do is buy time. Time for Britain to build more destroyers, time for America to enter the war, time for the balance to shift. So he keeps working. He refines the bomb's design, making it faster, more reliable. He develops new techniques for finding cribs, exploiting weaknesses in how the Germans compose their messages. He trains new recruits, teaching them how to think like the enemy, how to anticipate the patterns hidden in the noise. He doesn't sleep much, he doesn't talk about what he does, and he never, ever tells anyone that the survival of thousands of sailors depends on whether his machines can spin fast enough. In Hut 8, the decrypts keep coming. Coordinates, call signs, orders. The codebreakers pass them to the intelligence officers, who pass them to the Admiralty, who pass them to the fleet. And somewhere in the North Atlantic, a convoy changes course. A destroyer turns towards a suspicious contact. A U-boat dives too late and takes a depth charge pattern that sends it to the bottom. The sailors never know why, but Alan Turing does.
1941. The North Atlantic is a graveyard. In a single week, German U-boats sink 58 ships, over 300,000 tons of shipping sent to the bottom. Tankers explode in fireballs that light up the night sky. Freighters break apart under torpedo impacts, their hulls splitting open, cargo spilling into the sea. Men scramble for lifeboats in freezing water, some making it, most not. The convoys keep coming, because they have to, but the losses are staggering. Britain is bleeding. Donitz calls it the happy time. His U-boat commanders are racking up kills faster than ever. The wolf packs hunt in groups of 8, 10, sometimes 12 submarines, converging on a single convoy from multiple directions. The British escorts, usually just a handful of destroyers and corvettes, can't be everywhere at once. They race between merchant ships, dropping depth charges on sonar contacts that may or may not be real, while the U-boats slip through the gaps and fire at point-blank range. At Bletchley Park, the pressure is suffocating. The codebreakers are breaking naval Enigma regularly now, sometimes within hours of the Germans changing their settings. But breaking the code isn't enough. The intelligence has to be actionable. It has to reach the Admiralty in time. And even when it does, there are limits to what the Royal Navy can do with it. Turing watches the reports come in from the intelligence officers. Convoy SC-29, 4 ships sunk. Convoy HX-126, 9 ships sunk. Convoy OB-318, 5 ships sunk. The numbers pile up like bodies. He knows the decrypts are helping. Convoys are being rerouted, wolf packs are being avoided, some attacks are being blunted, but it's not enough. The U-boats are winning. Part of the problem is the Enigma itself. The German Navy doesn't just use one version of the code. They use multiple keys, different settings for different regions, different submarine groups, different command levels. Bletchley has broken Dolphin, the main operational key used by U-boats in the Atlantic, but there are other keys they haven't cracked yet. And even Dolphin changes unpredictably. Sometimes the Germans introduce new rotor wheels or change their codebook procedures or tighten their security protocols. Every change sends the codebreakers back to square one. Then there's the secrecy problem. The British can't act on every decrypt, or the Germans will realize their codes are compromised, so the Admiralty has to be selective.
They use cover stories, claiming they spotted a U-boat with aircraft reconnaissance, or picked up a submarine on radar, or received a tip from a neutral merchant ship. Sometimes they let convoys sail into danger just to maintain the illusion that Enigma is still secure. It's a calculated risk, trading lives for the long-term advantage of keeping the intelligence flowing. Turing hates it. He hates the mathematics of sacrifice, the cold logic that says 10 ships lost today might save 50 ships next month. But he understands it. If the Germans change the Enigma system, if they switch to a new encryption method that Bletchley can't break, then everything collapses. The convoys become blind again, the U-boats hunt unopposed, Britain starves. So the secret has to be protected, at any cost. In Hut 8, the team works through the night. Joan Clark is hunched over a stack of intercepts, searching for a crib that might unlock the day's settings. Hugh Alexander is at the blackboard, sketching out possible rotor configurations. A new recruit, a 19-year-old Cambridge student named Peter Hilton, is learning how to operate the bomb, watching the drum spin, waiting for the machine to stop. The air smells like cigarette smoke and stale tea. No one talks much, they just work. At 3:30 a.m., one of the bombs in Hut 11 stops. The operator checks the settings, runs the test, and confirms the match. They've broken the day's key. The decrypts start flowing immediately. A flurry of German messages now readable is rushed to the intelligence section. One message stands out. It's from U-boat command to a wolf pack operating south of Iceland. They're being directed towards convoy HX-129, which left Halifax 5 days ago and is now approaching the mid-Atlantic gap, the stretch of ocean where land-based aircraft can't reach, where the convoys are most vulnerable. The intercept is passed to the Admiralty, and within an hour, commanders in London study the coordinates, calculate the timing, and make a decision. They can't reroute the convoy, it's too close to the Wolfpack position, and a sudden course change would be too suspicious, but they can reinforce the escorts. 2 destroyers are detached from another convoy and ordered to join HX-129 at maximum speed. It's not much, but it might be enough. May 23, 1941, convoy HX-129 steams eastward through choppy seas. The merchant crews don't know they're being hunted. They don't know that 6 U-boats are closing in from the north and west, moving into attack positions. They don't know that 2 British destroyers are racing through the night to reach them. At 10:25 p.m., the first torpedo hits. A Norwegian freighter carrying timber takes the impact amidships and starts listing immediately. The crew abandons ship, lowering lifeboats into the dark water. Other merchant ships scatter, breaking formation, trying to zigzag away from the threat. The escorts charge towards the attack point, their sonar pinging, searching for the submarine. Then the destroyers arrive. HMS Bulldog and HMS Broadway come in fast with their radar sweeping the surface. They spot a U-boat running on the surface, U-110, commanded by Captain Lieutenant Fritz Julius Lemp. He's just fired his torpedoes and is trying to escape, but the destroyers are faster. Broadway opens fire with her deck guns, shells splashing around the submarine. Lemp has no choice. He orders an emergency dive. But he's too late. The destroyers are right on top of him. Depth charges roll off the stern, set to shallow detonation. The explosions hammer the submarine, cracking gauges, shorting out electrical systems. The lights go out. Water starts flooding into the control room. Lemp realizes his boat is crippled. If he stays submerged, they'll sink. He orders the crew to surface and abandon ship. U-110 breaks the surface at 10:35 p.m., her hull battered, seawater pouring from the conning tower. The crew scrambles out, jumping into the freezing Atlantic. The destroyers close in, expecting the submarine to scuttle and sink. But it doesn't. It's still floating. And then someone on Bulldog has an idea. Sub-Lieutenant David Balm, a 20-year-old officer, organizes a boarding party. They lower a whaleboat and row towards the stricken U-boat, not knowing if it's rigged to explode, not knowing if German sailors are still inside. Balm climbs through the conning tower hatch and drops into the submarine. It's dark, tilted, water sloshing through the compartments. But the crew left in a hurry. They didn't destroy anything. Balm and his team move through the submarine, grabbing everything they can: codebooks, charts, signal logs, technical manuals. And then in the radio room, they find it. An Enigma machine, intact with the current rotor settings still in place. They haul it up through the hatch along with everything else and transfer it to Bulldog. The submarine finally sinks an hour later, slipping beneath the waves. The German crew, now prisoners, believe their boat went down with all its secrets. They have no idea what the British just captured.
The Enigma machine and documents are rushed to Bletchley Park under armed guard. When Turing and his team see what's arrived, they realize the significance immediately. This isn't just an Enigma machine, they already have those. It's the code books, the current settings, the internal documents that explain how the Germans are using the system. It's a treasure trove. Over the next weeks, Bletchley uses the captured material to refine their techniques, to fill in the gaps in their understanding, to break the codes faster and more reliably. The intelligence improves. The Admiralty gets better information, more detailed, more timely. The convoys start making it through more often. But the Germans still don't know. They think U-110 sank with all hands. They think Enigma is still secure. And that's the edge that will turn the tide.
1941. The U-boats are still hunting, but the odds are shifting. In June alone, the Royal Navy sinks 5 German submarines, more than in any previous month of the war. It's not luck. The destroyers and corvettes are finding U-boats in places they shouldn't be able to find them, arriving at refueling coordinates just as the submarines surface, tracking wolf packs that should be invisible. Donitz reviews the reports with growing unease. Something has changed. The British are getting better at this, but he can't figure out how. His staff suggests possibilities. Maybe the British have improved their radar, maybe their direction-finding equipment is more accurate, maybe they're getting intelligence from spies in French ports where the U-boats dock. Donitz orders tighter security protocols, radio silence during certain operations, coded reference points instead of direct coordinates, randomized patrol patterns. But he doesn't suspect Enigma. The machine is mathematically sound, the settings change daily. Breaking it would require resources and genius beyond what he believes the British possess. He's wrong on both counts. At Bletchley Park, the captured U-110 material has accelerated everything. The codebooks gave Turing's team insights into how the Germans structure their messages, which phrases they use most often, which procedural shortcuts they take. The codebreakers can now predict likely cribs with better accuracy. The bombs run faster because they have better starting points. And most importantly, Bletchley can now break naval Enigma almost every day, sometimes within hours, often by mid-morning. The intelligence is transforming the convoy battles. When a U-boat transmits its position report to headquarters, Bletchley decrypts it and passes the coordinates to the Admiralty. When Donitz orders a wolf pack to converge on a specific convoy route, the Royal Navy reroutes the convoy before the submarines arrive. When U-boats arrange to meet a supply submarine for refueling, Royal Navy ships appear at the rendezvous and sink the tanker, leaving the attack boats stranded with empty fuel tanks. The Germans think they're fighting the ocean and the escorts. They don't realize they're fighting a team of mathematicians in Buckinghamshire. But even with Enigma broken, the Battle of the Atlantic is far from won. Germany is building submarines faster than Britain can sink them. By August 1941, Donitz has over 200 U-boats operational or under construction. The Atlantic is vast, 10 million square miles of open water. Even with intelligence, finding a submarine is like searching for a needle in an ocean-sized haystack. The convoys are safer, but not safe. Ships are still being sunk. Sailors are still dying. And then in December 1941, everything changes. Japan attacks Pearl Harbor. 4 days later, Germany declares war on the United States. Suddenly, America is in the fight, and Donitz sees an opportunity. The U.S. East Coast is completely unprepared for submarine warfare. American cities blaze with lights at night, no blackouts, no dimmed streetlights, nothing to hide the silhouettes of merchant ships sailing past. The U.S. Navy has almost no convoy system in place. Ships sail independently, unescorted, following predictable routes. It's a U-boat commander's dream. Donitz launches Operation Drumbeat, Paukenschlag, sending his most experienced commanders across the Atlantic to hunt off the American coast. The slaughter begins almost immediately. In January 1942 alone, U-boats sink 62 ships in American waters. Tankers explode within sight of Virginia Beach. Freighters go down off the coast of Florida. Bodies and debris wash up on tourist beaches. The Americans call it the second happy time. At Bletchley Park, the codebreakers watch the carnage unfold through the decrypts. They're reading the German messages, U-boat positions, attack reports, victory claims. But the intelligence isn't reaching the Americans fast enough. The U.S. military is still learning how to use signals intelligence, still building its own cryptanalysis network, still figuring out how to protect sources and methods while acting on the information. The coordination is messy. Ships that could be saved aren't. Submarines that could be hunted escape. Turing and his team push harder. More bombs are built. By mid-1942, there are over 40 machines running at Bletchley and its outstations. The operation expands. New huts are built. More cryptanalysts are recruited. The Navy section grows from a handful of people to hundreds. They're not just breaking Enigma anymore. They're industrializing it, turning cryptanalysis into a production line. But then, in February 1942, disaster strikes. The Germans introduce a new version of Enigma for their Atlantic U-boats. It's called M4, a 4-rotor machine instead of 3. The extra rotor multiplies the possible settings by 26, exponentially increasing the complexity. Overnight, Bletchley goes blind. The bombs are designed for 3-rotor Enigma. They can't handle the new system. The decrypts stop. The intelligence dries up. The effect is immediate. Sinkings spike. In the first half of 1942, U-boats destroy over 500 ships, more than 3 million tons of shipping. The convoys are sailing blind again, just like in 1940. The Battle of the Atlantic tilts back in Germany's favor. At Bletchley Park, Turing and his team work frantically to adapt. They need new bombs, redesigned for 4 rotors. They need new techniques for finding cribs in the more complex system. They need time, but time is the one thing they don't have. Every day without intelligence, more ships sink. Every week the blackout continues, Britain's supply situation becomes more desperate. The breakthrough comes in October 1942. HMS Petard, a British destroyer, attacks and disables U-559 in the Mediterranean. A boarding party manages to get inside the sinking submarine before it goes down. 2 sailors, Lieutenant Tony Fasson and Able Seaman Colin Grazier, dive into the flooded compartments and retrieve codebooks and Enigma materials. They pass the documents up through the hatch to a 3rd sailor, 16-year-old canteen assistant Tommy Brown. Then the submarine sinks, taking Fasson and Grazier with them. They drown, but the materials survive. The captured codebooks give Bletchley the information they need to crack M4 Enigma. By December 1942, the bombs are running again. The decrypts resume. The intelligence starts flowing. And in early 1943, the tide turns for good. The Allies now have more destroyers, more escort carriers, more long-range aircraft. The Mid-Atlantic Gap, the area where U-boats used to hunt unopposed, is closing. Aircraft fitted with radar and depth charges patrol the convoy routes. Escort groups hunt submarines aggressively instead of just defending the merchants. The Americans have finally organized a convoy system along their coast. And through it all, Bletchley Park is feeding the Admiralty a constant stream of intelligence. U-boat losses climb. In March 1943, the Wolfpacks launch a massive coordinated assault on 2 convoys, SC-122 and HX-223. It looks like a German victory, but it's the last one. In April and May 1943, the Royal Navy and Allied Air Forces sink 56 U-boats, 56 submarines, with all their crews, in 2 months. Donitz realizes the Atlantic is no longer survivable. On May 24, 1943, he withdraws the Wolfpacks from the North Atlantic. The U-boats retreat to safer waters. The convoys get through. The Battle of the Atlantic is over. The Allies have won. And Alan Turing, who never fired a shot, never commanded a ship, never set foot on a submarine, changed the outcome of the war.
Never knew. When the war ends in May 1945, the men who fought in the Atlantic, the merchant crews, the naval escorts, the lookouts, who scanned for periscopes through 1,000 freezing nights, they return home with their own explanations for why they survived. Better tactics, improved radar, more ships, American industrial power, luck. They read the official histories, the newspaper accounts, the post-war analyses. They learn about the destroyers and the aircraft, the convoys and the escort carriers. But they don't learn about Bletchley Park, because Bletchley Park doesn't exist, not officially. When the war ends, the British government classifies everything. The bomb bays are dismantled, the huts at Bletchley are cleared out, the thousands of people who worked there, the cryptanalysts, the bomb bay operators, the intelligence officers, the translators, are sent home with a single instruction: never speak of what you did. The Official Secrets Act binds them to silence. Some of them worked at Bletchley for 5 years and never told their own families what they were doing there. Husbands and wives kept the secret from each other. Parents kept it from their children. Alan Turing goes back to his work in mathematics and computing. He never talks about the war. He's forbidden to, but he probably wouldn't anyway. He's not interested in credit or recognition. He's interested in ideas about computation, about artificial intelligence, about whether machines can think. He takes a position at the National Physical Laboratory, then later at the University of Manchester, working on the theoretical foundations of computer science. His colleagues know he's brilliant, but most of them have no idea what he did between 1939 and 1945.
the secret holds for decades. In the 1970s, a few books begin to hint at signals intelligence efforts during the war. In 1974, a British intelligence officer named F.W. Winterbotham publishes The Ultra Secret, revealing for the first time that the Allies had broken German codes. The book is a sensation. Veterans who fought in the war suddenly understand why certain battles went the way they did, why certain decisions were made, why convoys that should have been massacred somehow made it through. But even Winterbotham's book doesn't tell the full story. He focuses on the Air Force and Army intelligence, on how Enigma decrypts helped win battles in North Africa and Normandy. He barely mentions the Battle of the Atlantic, and he doesn't name Alan Turing. Most of the public still doesn't know who built the bomb bays, who designed the methods, who led the team that broke naval Enigma. Turing isn't there to see his work finally recognized. He died in 1954 at the age of 41. The official verdict was suicide, cyanide poisoning. 2 years earlier, he'd been convicted of gross indecency for a homosexual relationship, which was illegal in Britain at the time. He was given a choice: prison or chemical castration through hormone treatment. He chose the treatment. It destroyed him. His security clearance was revoked, his career was damaged, his health deteriorated. On June 7, 1954, his housekeeper found him dead in his bed, a half-eaten apple on the nightstand. The apple was never tested for cyanide, but the inquest concluded he'd poisoned himself. Some historians dispute this, suggesting it could have been an accident. Turing worked with chemicals in his home laboratory and was sometimes careless, but the circumstances, the conviction, the treatment, the isolation suggest a man pushed to the edge by a government that used his genius and then discarded him when it became inconvenient. He saved thousands of lives, and his country destroyed him for who he loved. It takes decades for the truth to emerge fully. In the 1990s and 2000s, more documents are declassified. Historians gain access to Bletchley Park records. Surviving codebreakers finally feel free to tell their stories. The public learns about Hut 8, about the Bombays, about the daily race to break Enigma before the settings changed at midnight. They learn about the mathematicians and linguists who worked in secrecy, who never received medals or public recognition, who went back to ordinary lives after the war without ever being able to explain what they had done. And they learn about Alan Turing. The recognition comes too late for him to see it, but it comes. In 2009, British Prime Minister Gordon Brown issues a formal apology for Turing's treatment. In 2013, Queen Elizabeth II grants him a posthumous royal pardon. In 2019, the Bank of England announces that Turing's face will appear on the £50 note, alongside the words, "This is only a foretaste of what is to come, and only the shadow of what is going to be." It's a quote from a 1949 article Turing wrote about computing machines and intelligence. He was trying to explain that the machines he envisioned weren't just calculators. They were capable of something more, something that might one day resemble human thought. To see modern computers, never saw the internet or artificial intelligence or any of the technologies that grew from his theoretical work. But he saw the potential. He understood better than almost anyone that the machines could change everything. They already had. Weren't just code-breaking devices. They were programmable machines designed to solve complex logical problems at speeds no human could match. They were, in a very real sense, early computers. Turing's work at Bletchley laid the groundwork for the digital age. The ideas he developed about algorithms, about how to represent problems mathematically, about how machines could process information, became the foundation of computer science. A smartphone, when you search the internet, when you stream a video or send an encrypted message, you're using technology that traces its lineage back to Hut 8, back to the Bombays spinning in the middle of the night, back to a quiet mathematician who believed machines could think. The Battle of the Atlantic was won with guns and ships and aircraft, yes, but it was also won with mathematics, with logic, with the understanding that information is a weapon as powerful as any torpedo, and that the side with better intelligence has an advantage no amount of firepower can overcome. The U-boats sank over 3,500 Allied ships during the war. They killed more than 70,000 sailors and merchant crew. But without Bletchley Park, without Turing's bomb bays, the losses would have been catastrophic. Britain might have been starved into surrender. The convoys might have stopped running. The war might have turned out very differently. How many ships were saved because the Enigma codes were broken? How many sailors lived because a convoy was rerouted at the last minute, or a wolf pack was intercepted, or a U-boat was sunk before it could attack? There's no way to know exactly. The intelligence was used carefully, sparingly, always balanced against the need to protect the secret. But historians estimate that breaking Enigma shortened the war in Europe by at least 2 years. 2 years of bombing, of fighting, of dying, avoided because a team of codebreakers worked faster than the enemy could encrypt. And at the center of it all was a man who loved mathematics, who built machines that could think, who saw patterns where others saw only chaos. Alan Turing never commanded an army. He never flew a plane or captained a ship. He never stormed a beach or fired a rifle. But he changed the course of history. One brilliant mind, one extraordinary machine, one unbreakable determination to solve the unsolvable. He won a war with his brain, and the world never knew until it was far too late to thank him.